describe Robert to say if it weren't for Robert, many of us would not be doing what we do now because he started a movement. And I'm not going to give you all the juicy stuff because we're going to talk about it. But he started something here in Chicago that did not exist before Chicago and has had worldwide resonance. I'll just keep it at that, and I'll say thank you for joining us again.
My pleasure.
Awesome, awesome. So I want to make sure I can hear you. Hang on 1 second. See, when we're live, you got to deal with all the live stuff. So I'm plugging in so I can hear my brother talk. But hello, everybody out there who's watching. I hope you all had a good week as we get set up in our studio here in Evanston, Chicago. By the way, if you ever want to be a guest on the show or just come and hang out with us, you are always welcome to do that. We are always looking for opportunities to tell this Chicago story. And if you're a part of that Chicago story, we want to understand it. There are many stories about house music in Chicago. But undoubtedly, Robert's is one of the most important. Not that everybody else isn't, because it is. It's been a hell of a week.
Man.
It's been a crazy week. Did you watch the debate?
No.
I called it a debate because it was not a State of the Union. It was really like a debate, like crazy person and then the rest of the people. I couldn't stomach it.
Well, I can't watch a political landscape right now.
I can't either. All right, there we go. So listen, Robert, let's get into it. One of the things that I want to do is I want to talk about the beginning of your time in Chicago, but in the pre-conversation, sometimes when we have guests on, there's always like a pre-conversation that's always better. It's often better than the actual interview. So like, I'm like, how do I get, hey, Tonka, how do I get like that essence of what we were describing right back here? Because Robert was telling me some fascinating things. So in my notes, I was saying, so you came to Chicago in the early 70s, but that was not the case.
No.
Talk about when you came to Chicago the first time.
Well, I actually came to Chicago as an infant with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
She was pregnant when she was here, and then her and my father had a little disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
And she went back to New York. He came to New York to get her and brought her back and promised her the housing that she wanted. But he lied.
Oh, no.
So while she was here, I was a preemie anyway, and I had gotten sicker.
Okay.
So they put me in a hospital here in Chicago, somewhere I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And her and my mother and my father did not resolve their problem. So she left him again, okay? And went back to New York and left me with him and my father's side of the family.
Where were you guys living?
They were living at 40, they owned the building at 48th and Prairie, one of the old gravestones.
Okay.
And unfortunately, because I guess of the nature of their relationship at that time,
Mm-hmm.
my parents,
Great. That's great. I'm sure they're very proud of you. She's very proud of you.
She thinks it's hilarious. Yeah.
Well, you done well. So that was something I think most people didn't know. When we talk about Robert Williams, we picture, I think our image, our community's image is that this was a fully fleshed out grown man who's a native New Yorker who came to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, you joined a group of gay people that you knew to start doing some social events, and that eventually that people were sort of closeted, so a lot of stuff was happening in people's homes or different bars. And I think we have this image of what the community was like when you came to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
The places that we hear most about are the Bowery, the Den One, Jeffrey Pub, and other places. But tell us about what it was like when you came back. First of all, before we even get there, what motivated you to come back to Chicago as a young adult?
Um, I was in the entertainment business in New York.
Okay.
I really can't explain on what I was doing in college and after college. And
You say you can't expound on that?
well, not really at this point, but
okay. That's
I,
part two.
yeah, part two for real. But my mother, right after high school, my mother decided to sell our building and move to LA.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted me to go with her, but I was like, mm.
And you were a teenager at this point? Okay.
So I was like, I wasn't really thrilled. So she said, fine, stay in New York. So she hooked me up a bank account and got me an apartment
Nice.
in Harlem up on the hill,
Mm-hmm.
St. Nicholas, and left. So,
you were very young and independent.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I worked for a very exclusive company back then
mm-hmm.
that I shouldn't have been working with. But
okay.
however,
in the entertainment industry.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine, when I was a senior, a friend of mine, my buddy Jose, me and him, we didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
an upperclassman named Charlie Brown. He invited us to a party one Saturday night, but I told him I couldn't go because my mother wouldn't allow it.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, well, just tell him you're going to Jose's house. And I was like, okay, that might work. So I told my mother, and they picked us up. Charlie picked us up in this big limo. And I'd never been in a limo before, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And we went to Central Park West to a birthday party, which was, what's his name? Uh-oh. I had a blank right
That's
there.
okay. It'll come to you.
Yeah,
Central Park West birthday party.
Yeah, he's a musician. Well, anyway, he was an entertainer, and we didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Andy Warhol
Okay.
and Truman Capote.
Wow.
Nick Ashford was all at the party, but we were young. We didn't know who these people were.
You didn't know who Nick Ashford was?
No.
Really?
That was before he hooked up with Valerie, too.
Oh, wow. So everyone was really young.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you didn't know, did you know who Andy Warhol was?
No.
You just saw this crazy white guy?
I'm just out of high school.
So you're like 16, 17 years old. These
I didn't know who these people were.
Okay.
And so we were like, so we got introduced to more people. Then we went to another party and we got introduced to Patty.
Patti LaBelle?
Mm-hmm.
We were just playing Patti LaBelle.
Yeah, we used to hang out with her in the village.
Wow.
Yeah. So during all the stuff that I was doing, it became a rat race because I was working too. I worked for the Department of for probation,
Mm-hmm.
juvenile probation. That's where I met Frankie Knuckles.
So you had to be a little older than that. Well,
Oh yeah, yeah. I had turned. Well, this is
your early 20s.
yeah, early
Okay.
20s. Yeah, and I was a juvenile counselor at the Spotswood Juvenile Center in the Bronx,
Mm-hmm.
and Larry the band and Frankie Knuckles were part of the truancy because they were minors and they weren't going to school. They were hanging out.
So they were. So that's how you met them, because you were their counselor.
Yeah, I was their juvenile.
So
counselor.
Robert Williams was Frankie Knuckles and Larry Levan's counselor. Okay, it's all starting to add up now.
So I was back and forth in court with them, and then when it was this club in the village, East Village, called the Chamber Lane,
Mm-hmm.
and I was there hanging out, having a good time. And Frankie walked up to me and asked me what I was doing there. And then we got Larry, and they both like, Mr. Williams, what are you doing here? Pretty big club, but you know, I was like, oops.
Well, that's how it was back then. You
Yeah.
would see people even when we went to the warehouse, and we'd go, "What is she doing here?
Yeah.
What is he doing here?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they blackmailed me a little.
No way. What did that look like?
Well, they said, you know, I told them I'd see them in my office the next day. And they were like, we're not coming to your office. You know, for what?
What were they
And
going
if
to
we
out
do,
you
we're going to tell everybody,
that you're gay?
yeah, and that you were at this club doing woo, 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 woo.
Oh wow. Okay.
Various of things. And I was like, okay, cool. That's, you don't have to meet me at the office. Yeah.
So that's fascinating that you met Frankie and Larry Levan, two arguably like top names when we think of the origins of house music and sort of disco in that era where it crossed over. I think that's fascinating. So tell me again now. So you were there. What brought you to Chicago?
I had become tired of the rat race of New York.
Okay.
So I still had relatives. I had relatives in Chicago.
Right.
All of my father's side was there.
Okay.
So my aunt was like, you should move here. The jobs are better. You need a better job.
Okay.
There's lots of opportunities in Chicago. You know, I know you're tired of New York, and you can stay in the bottom apartment here on Prairie.
Okay.
I own the building.
Right.
I was like, sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I packed up and came on here.
And you came here, so you came just for opportunities, not necessarily to open a club.
No, I didn't come for opening club at all.
So then tell me how that evolved once you got here.
Okay, now my fraternity brother, Michael Matthews,
Yes.
he used to come, him and Larry
Mm-hmm.
Hope, he used to bring Larry Hope, his boyfriend, to
Mm-hmm.
New York to visit me, right? So when they found out I was moving to Chicago, they became very excited, you know. And so they asked me, could I show them how to give
Mm-hmm.
a New York party in Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, you know. So I asked them, did they have any loft spaces here?
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know what a loft space was.
Okay.
I was like, things are not going well. Yeah.
So wait, let me ask you this. So when you came, you're hanging out with Michael and Larry. Where were you going? I mean, you were hanging out.
I went, they took me to this club called Bistro.
Bistro. Okay.
And this white club.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they asked for ID, and I was insulted because
Mm-hmm.
I never had ID in New York, period. We never carried ID. You know, so I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I was going there, and then another pal took me to the Jeffrey Club.
Right.
Okay. And I thought that was probably pretty wild. I liked it though, but it was pretty wild.
You said it was pretty wild.
Yeah, because Chicago at that point to me was like what War said in their song, City, Country, City.
Oh, did you say? Did you say city, country, city?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said shitty country, city.
No, no, City.
Yeah, no, I think most people would agree with you. Kind of a suburb of Mississippi.
That starts. That's wild.
What? Okay, so I love this. So Larry and Michael were taking you around. They took you to Beast Road, White Club on the north side, right? Somewhere downtownish.
Yeah, around
Gold Coast.
Dearborn
Yeah.
and Hubbard.
Yep.
Around there.
And then they took you south to Jeffrey Pub on 71st and Jeffrey. I'm trying to sort of nail down the timeline. When did that happen? What year?
I was like 75.
So 75, okay. So you were getting acquainted with the city. The other clubs we hear a lot about are the Bowery, the Den One.
Well, the Bowery didn't happen till much later.
Okay.
Okay, it wasn't even open. It didn't open until...
Was that 77, 78, something like that? Later? Couldn't have been that much later.
Well, it was like, yes it was, because it was the closing of the warehouse.
What?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No mistake. Yeah, it did happen kind of early. Yeah. As a matter of fact, 76.
So Bowery was 76. And the Den One was 77, from what I read.
Yeah.
And they had another DJ before.
But see, the Bowery, okay, before Michael, they belonged to a gay social group. Okay,
Right.
and they called themselves Us.
Us.
Okay. Now, I wasn't a member of that team, their social group. I was just a tag along because I knew Michael. So I hung out with them, man. And they gave a party on Belmont, which the police raided. And then they said, Michael said he found a loft space on Clinton, 116 South Clinton, which belonged to this girl called Maxat. And she made knitted those militant hats, you know, the red,
yes,
green, and black. So they persuaded her. I didn't know these people, by the way. Like I said, I was just a tag along. Right? And they persuaded her to let them have a party in her loft space. Okay, so it was Michael Matthews, Donald Crosby, Benny Winfield, April Winfield, a group of them, right? And so I had, and Siegfried Schuh, okay, he was the financial sponsor of their little project.
Right.
Robert Williams was only an advisor. Okay.
And so you were not a member of Us Social Club.
No.
But we also think of us as US.
Right. But
that's a different entity.
Right.
Okay.
But I was not a member. I was just a tag along because I was associated with Michael. And then Michael, he introduced me to all these people. Right? And I fortunately advised him how to give parties. And so the first party they gave, Benny was the DJ, Benny Winfield, and Michael Matthews. I had nothing to do with the party except for being there.
Okay. Yeah. And now, was this at the Bowery?
No.
Oh, this was the place on
Clinton. 116 South Clinton.
Okay.
Okay. The second party that they had there, after the party, the building burnt down. It fell on the Flourishing Shoe Company right next door.
Oh, wow. I know exactly what you're talking about.
On Clinton, right?
Okay.
So, this is when I started having a little more input, okay? Because then they were out of a home, okay? A party home. And so the people who owned the girls' building on 16 South Clinton also owned the building that was connected on the corner across from Union Station, which was the address of 555 West Adams.
Okay.
Right? And me and Ziggy went over there to talk to the broker. Arthur Lipschultz was his name. Okay? And he persuaded, all that stuff is burnt up in the building over there. What? So he said, the only thing I can do for you guys is let you have the top floor of the penthouse of the building, the seventh floor, which was on the top of the building.
Was it a walk up?
One flight. The elevator only went to six. And you had to walk
Okay.
on. Yeah. So that's when I got a little more involved because I taught Michael how to decorate.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know how to do all this stuff.
Okay.
And I was having fun. And then they asked me to DJ. Well, it wasn't good, but I did.
Robert Williams
Yeah.
at one point was a DJ.
Yeah.
For the record.
So the social club at that point, with all of them, right?
Yes.
They were having internal strife,
Mm-hmm.
you know, not getting along
Mm-hmm.
because they were supposed to be paying dues, and Donald or somebody in the church or whoever they were, I was still not involved.
Sure.
They were having a big argument, so they decided to vote me in
Mm-hmm.
as their president.
Even though you weren't a member.
Huh. But I was with them,
A tag along that became a member.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which was a mistake on their part because I looked at things on a business level.
Sure.
Okay, as a New Yorker, I was like, what the hell are y'all doing?
Mm-hmm.
So I hired a lawyer
Mm-hmm.
and expounded one of the members, which was Donald. Got him kicked out.
Mm-hmm.
And then with April Winfield helped me incorporate.
Was April related to Benny?
Yeah, his wife.
Oh, that's Benny's wife. Got
Mm-hmm.
it. Okay.
Yeah. So at that point, that group left, decided because they were mad at me for putting Donald out.
Okay.
So they left and formed their own club called the Bowery.
Okay. You know, Donald talks about that in Barbara Allen's documentary that was on WTTW.
Mm-hmm, that
House
was a
music.
little twisted.
Okay, well, yeah, I wanted to get to that because there's a lot of stories, and there are many interpretations and perceptions of what happened, and that's why I want to talk about the beginning of this because
Mm-hmm.
it's a really critical period when we're talking about 75 to 77
Right.
when the warehouse was
Right.
open. Okay, so continue.
So when they did that, they left. They got mad. Michael, everybody left except for me, Ziggy, and Benny. But Benny was having a relationship problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which I'll tell you about later.
Okay. Well, listen, we understand that. Let's just be clear: people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community back then, they're often fraught with difficult relationships.
Yeah.
Because it was not widely accepted in families and in the community to even have a relationship.
Well,
of any sort.
okay, so they left me and Ziggy.
Yes.
Okay, everybody else went and they opened up their club called the Bowery. Vicky Jones, all of these girls, all these people were gay.
Mm-hmm.
And then they found a place on Federal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right over near that other train, the LaSalle Street train station over there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back behind Jones Commercial School.
Okay. Right.
That's where the Bowery was.
It's by Harrison.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they formed the Bowery, right? Now, meanwhile, when they left, everybody followed them. Okay, so they didn't have no more parties up on 555 West Adams, right?
Now, what was the name of? Was that the first warehouse?
Well, you could say it was, in a sense, yeah, because it was in warehouse space, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But it wasn't known as the warehouse.
No.
But it was kind of the predecessor
Right.
to that. Okay.
And maybe people did call it the warehouse. I don't know.
Right.
Okay? Because when I took over, things had fell apart because of my action.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, putting down out made all of them mad. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so they left. You know, we'll fix you. You know,
Okay. So you have
it's
a club, but you're not going to have anybody in
we had a club and there was no one in it.
it.
Okay, when people found out,
Wow.
they
Yeah.
said no.
Okay.
Okay, so here we have 10,000 square feet of space and no one.
At 555 West Adams,
Right.
nobody's in there because the owners, well, the
No,
organizers, Benny, April,
Vicky,
etc.
all of
Vicky,
them.
they
Yeah,
said,
us,
we're out.
the us
The Us
group.
Studio.
No,
So
the us group.
Us Social Club
Right,
versus US Studio, which we'll get to.
right, right. Okay, yeah, us, the us group. Okay, they dropped the us group and renamed themselves the Bowery.
Got it.
Okay,
Okay.
so they were no longer us anything. They were the Bowery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so me and Ziggy was upstairs at 555 looking stupid because we didn't have no customers, no nothing. And the space was huge, 10,000 square feet.
Wow.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we was like, okay, we're done. All right, and so me and him was hashing over. You know, I guess we're gonna have to pack this and take this out of here. And we were sitting. The building actually went from the top floor
Mm-hmm.
of 555 or 7, went from Clinton all the way to Jefferson.
That's a big building.
Yeah, it still is. It's new now, newer
Okay.
building. They tore the old one down.
Mm-hmm.
So you sat on this end of Clinton, you could look right down on Canal, on Clinton
Mm-hmm.
at the train station. On this side, you could look down on Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
So we were sitting on the Jefferson side, the west end of the building,
Okay.
right? And we saw this little Art Deco building for rent. And so, as a business person, I said, we're gonna have our own club, Ziggy. So let's start a membership drive. So April Winfield helped me get a lawyer, which is Mr. Bob, I mean, Herbert N. Sherrod,
Mm-hmm.
what you call Bob Sherrod's
Bob
brother.
Surratt's brother. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Bob Surratt. Yeah.
Yeah. So his brother was our attorney, my attorney. Okay. So I went and talked to him, and he said, "What are you doing?" So as a New Yorker, I explained everything, and he said, "Well, I'll incorporate you. And what do you want to be called?" So I said, "Well, since they left the name Us, we'll put Us Studio."
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So was the name always Us? Why did people refer to it as US Studio?
Because it was U.S.
Mm. But originally it was Us Studio.
No, originally it was Us. The
Right.
social group name was Us. Like
Right.
our group name was Us,
I understand.
not U.S.
But people
There was no studio.
yes, Us Social Club.
Right.
But you took the name Us and attached it to studio, so it was Us Studio.
Yeah.
So when did it become, or did it ever become US Studio? Or did people?
No, it was never U.S.
Oh,
studio.
so people just called it that.
Right.
Got it.
Right. Because they couldn't differentiate the meaning of U.S.
Versus Us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it U.S. or is it us? You know what I mean? Same spelling.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I incorporated it in 1976
Mm-hmm.
with my lawyer Herbert N. Sherrod. Okay. And that's when I decided I was going to do a club. Before, I wasn't thinking about, even when they were having the party, I wasn't thinking about no club.
No.
I was just enjoying myself
Okay.
with them. So they were handling all the business of doing what they were doing, giving parties.
Well, why did you move from 555 West Adams? It was 10,000 square feet. You didn't have anybody in there.
We couldn't afford that.
So it was just too much.
Too much.
So Jefferson was a better business deal.
Right.
And it was a cute building.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
And Art Deco.
I like the Art Deco.
Okay.
This is-
See, now,
Yeah.
you forget this is artistic mindset. You understand?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So I recognize the building as an Art Deco building. Okay? Because we did with Art Deco in New York. Okay? But when me and Ziggy Winfield, she went to see it, the brokers said, okay, we told them we were music promoters.
Okay.
We promoted the arts. So they said, okay. So they, wrote us out a lease. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we got the building. It was 3 floors, top, second, and the basement. It was really nice. 3,000 square per floor. 3,000 square feet per floor. Then when we got into space, Ziggy was like, okay, what are we going to do? We don't know any DJs.
You hadn't met Ron Hardy, or
No.
what about Benny and well, you guys were sort of divorced, like you had divorced that group, so you weren't going to bring in the DJs at this space.
No.
Is that right?
Right.
Got it.
Now Michael Matthews, my friend, he had went too with them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think they were angry with me because I'm the one that started the mess by getting rid of Donald. They're close friends. This is a gay sort of
it's clicky.
Yeah, clicky sort of situation.
That happens.
Yeah. So I said, okay, I can do a club. And so I was telling a friend of mine in New York about this. I called him, right? And he was like, why don't you come back home and get some of your homies to help you do it? I said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. So you were reaching out to your circle of friends for support.
So,
and those were in New York.
I reached out to my New Yorkers.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So, first person I reached out to was Larry Levan. And he was like, no.
Because he was having his own life in New York.
Yeah, but that's not really the reason he said no, because I had bad mouth to Chicago when I visited from New
York. Okay. Okay.
So that was like, Robert, you were there a couple of years ago and you said it was slow and woo, woo, woo.
In one documentary, you said Chicago was dead.
Dead, yeah, yeah. I had said all that.
Yeah.
So they was like, that would be a no.
Okay.
So I asked T. Scott.
Wow.
And he was like, Robert, I just got a job at Better Days.
I remember Better Days.
I can't go. So I said, I'm going to ask. So I had kind of ran out. I didn't ask Nicky Sonano at the gallery because we weren't really friends like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew him, but so after T and Larry, then I thought about Frankie, but he wasn't really a DJ. He was an artist, and he only hung out with Larry because he was Larry's sidekick.
Okay.
And he followed Larry. He was in Larry's shadow all the time.
Yeah.
Not doing really too much, lights maybe or something. They had a gig. So I said, well, he might work. So I went to him anyway. So he was like, didn't you say Chicago was? I said, yeah, but things have improved.
I'm just telling him anything.
Yeah, improved. So he said, I said, plus, I have a building. Now, he went to Parsons School of Design. So he knew about Art Deco and all that. So I took an Art Deco building too. So I showed him a picture of it. He thought, well, that's cute. I said, well, why don't you come out and look at it at least? So he said, okay, you gonna pay my way? I said, yeah. So I paid for it. He came out. And he fell in love with the building, right? So he said, okay, well, fine. But they have sound systems here in Chicago? I said, I don't know. The only place us people were dealing with was, what's that place on Lake Street? They used to get equipment from it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Grand Stage Lighting.
Grand Stage Lighting,
yeah. That's what they were getting.
I think it's still there.
It is? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We used to rent a lot of machines from there.
Yeah, so it was Grand Stage Lighting. So I said, I don't know. So he said, well, Frankie said, why don't you ask Richard Long to help you? I said, oh, really?
Now, why'd you say that like that?
Because, you know, he was one of those Nelly queens. He was a businessman, but, you know.
Nelly Queens. You have to look that one up if you don't know what it is. Hey, Susie. Hey, Scott.
So I went to Richard and I explained, showed him the building. So Richard Long said this to me.
Mm-hmm.
He said he would come out and look at the space and tell me what I needed now. But first of all, I would have to find him some black boys.
Some black boys?
Boys, yeah.
Boys, B-O-Y-S?
That's correct.
It's getting messy.
Huh?
I said, we're getting messy.
Yeah, well.
So as in
Yeah.
companions or people to help hang the speakers?
Companion.
Okay.
You
Had he done sound systems in other places that you were aware of?
Oh yeah, he did. He did a sound system in a couple of clubs and his own. He had his own club in New York.
Okay.
Called the Soho Club.
Oh, so he was in New York.
Right.
So he came to Chicago.
And that's where Larry LeBand got his break at.
Gotcha. Okay.
So at Soho House.
So Richard Long was not only a sound guy, but he was a businessman too.
Mm-hmm. So he came out. He fell in love with this.
Is Richard still with us?
No.
Okay. When did he pass?
A couple of years ago.
Oh, just recently. Okay.
Maybe 5 or 6, maybe. I'm not sure. But Ziggy said that he would, you know, sponsor some of the payment for it. Okay. And I was like, okay, great. But Richard said he would cut the other payment off if I found him more companions while he was here making the installation. So I said, no problem.
All right. Tonka, are you catching this?
No problem, right? So he came out and measured the space and made the sound system, the tweeters, and so everything for that particular space. And then Frankie came out the second time. He sent all the equipment, the speakers, and sent by rail. Okay.
Wow.
So we got all our equipment by rail, you know. And Frankie came out, and him and Frankie went through putting things together the way Frankie wanted it. Okay. So he designed the system for the warehouse to the T.
That's amazing.
And it was an analog system at that time.
Of course.
You know? And for tweeters, we had tweeters, L-Tech Lansing horns with big wide horns with the top hanging. Under them, we had the mid speakers. We had 13 12-inch speakers in it, and the bass bottom. So it was all the way around the room. These 4 corners and 2 basses.
Yeah, that's why you could hear that train going all the way across. You would feel it.
Yeah.
Now you understand why we had such feelings about that sound system. Hey, Dawn Joy. That's you. You're beautiful.
So everything, and I was tied, I had became tied in with the political system in Chicago.
I was going to ask you about that. What do you recall? So this was 1977, still 76?
77, yeah.
77. What was happening politically?
Adlai Stevenson was running for president.
Okay.
Which he didn't win.
No, he didn't.
But I was hooked up with the father, Richard J. Daly. Okay.
Okay.
So I informed him that, you know, he told me to join the Democratic organization and bring him votes for that district.
The district down there by the warehouse?
Yeah.
In Jefferson. Okay.
That alderman. I forgot his name. So through Herbert and Sherratt, he was also the lawyer for the Democratic organization in Chicago.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So that cut off any foul play. Okay. So I was politically hooked up, right? But when I first opened the warehouse, the first party, Nobody came.
Mm-hmm. That must have been disappointing.
It was, but they were all going to the bar.
Okay, because it was you were competing on the same night for that crowd,
Right.
and the gay crowd was people who would at least go to those clubs, and especially if it's predominantly black. You know, there's not a whole lot of crowd to go around, I would imagine.
Well, the crowd that went around went to the
They all
bar. The
went to
gay
the same
kids went to
place.
the, yeah.
Okay.
And you know, I was being bad mouthed for what I did.
So
You know.
a little bit of a boycott.
Yeah. You know. So Frankie was like, "What the hell's going on? Why didn't the people come? We had the most fabulous club here in the city."
Uh-huh.
I said, "Well, you know, there's the boundary. What can I tell you? You know."
Right.
So he said, "Take me over there." I was like, "No." He said, "Take me over there." I was like, "No." You know, I'm not going over there.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "Take me over there." I said, "Okay, whatever." So I took him to the bar,
Mm-hmm.
and Michael Matthews knew him from New York when he used to come to visit me in New York, him and Larry Hope.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael was like overwhelmed to see him,
Mm-hmm.
right? And asked him would he play.
Mm-hmm.
He was a DJ at the bar.
Yeah.
He asked Frankie would he play. And Frankie was like, okay. After playing, that was a mistake on Michael's part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After playing, the kids who had went berserk. You know, I was like not impressed. I was over in the corner being shady. You know, I'm mad still.
Yeah. You don't want to be there.
No. So they asked Frankie, the people who came to that party, asked Frankie, where do you play at? And he said, well, I have a club on Jefferson. And they said, oh, can we come? He said, well, we're having a membership drive again
Mm-hmm.
this week. Y'all come down and, you know, get membership cards. We fill out applications because you have to fill out an application
Mm-hmm.
to be a member.
And you did that because that helped sort of circumvent some of the permit situation?
Oh, yeah, well, it helped with the Democratic organization.
Oh, you were still recruiting? Oh, wow. So that's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, we're learning so much today.
Yeah, so.
That's why you were a membership organization, because you were hooked up with Richard Daley at the time.
Right.
And he.
And all the aldermen and everything.
All right.
Yeah.
So they were trying to recruit
people. Yeah. So, cutting the story here. After the warehouse started,
mm-hmm.
The warehouse closed because, well, let me just cut through the chase. The warehouse closed because of Frankie Knuckles.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where the warehouse closed, by the way?
I know when it closed because I was there,
yeah,
1982.
But do you know why it closed?
Well, no, I've heard, I think you've told me before, but I know there was a disagreement.
No.
Okay.
It had been one, but that was because Frankie took equipment to Medusa. Remember Medusa opened up his new spot?
Yeah.
That was a disagreement.
Was it the spot on Harrison or was
it?
Okay.
That's correct.
Ah, the plot thickens. 161 Harrison. Someone was just talking about that space. Yeah. That was Dave Shelton's first club.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that's the space I went to and told them to take down my equipment and take it back to the warehouse. And Frankie, don't you ever do that again.
Okay, because that was a Friday night party.
Mm-hmm.
I remember. I was there. We were going there and then we were going on Saturday. So we catch Frankie in both places.
So Frankie was a little upset, told me that I was trying to stagnate his career.
Oh my.
You know, I said, well, why are you taking our equipment over there? Mm-hmm. That's not quite the language I use, but over there.
Okay.
Okay? And I said, that's a no. You know, you don't own this equipment. You play for me. You work for me.
Right.
Okay? So, you know, things didn't go well. But we kind of like went on, right?
So the warehouse technically could have stayed open past 82.
Yes.
So I was right to say there was a disagreement.
No.
Okay, I was not right to say there was a disagreement. Somebody help me out. Preston, Leonard, somebody.
No, there wasn't.
There was not a disagreement.
No.
What was it?
Okay. Now, I told you I was politically, the warehouse was politically plugged
Yes.
in the city, right?
Got it.
Wasn't touched. Parents used to come down there looking for their children.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the police. Police were like, God, my God. You know, parents would come. Oh, my daughter, I know she's in here. You know, take her to the top of the stairs and look down. Oh, and the parents would be like, oh, my God, we're all going to hell. Yeah,
They're
they
like,
would,
it's
they
Sodom
would
and
be at the
Gomorrah
top
in
of the
there.
stairs quoting scripture.
Well, my parents would have been quoting scriptures if they knew I was there.
Yeah, well, hey.
I was like, yeah, you don't have to worry about it. It's all fun. It's all good.
Yeah.
No sin
So,
here.
what happened was they had a new turnover in the building department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they recruited some new rookies. Okay, and they were down on Jefferson looking at the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
These are new building inspectors. They didn't know what they were doing, sort of, kind of. They were just new rookies. So when they got to the warehouse, they heard music.
Mm-hmm.
So they knocked on the door, and Frankie opened the door, and they was like, "Okay, what is this?"
On a Saturday night?
No, it was during the week.
Okay. But they heard music.
Right, he was down there
Practicing
playing,
or something. Yeah. Okay.
So they was like, "Well, what is this space?" Because you know it doesn't look like anything from the outside.
No,
It did.
Art Deco building.
Yeah. So Frankie said, "Well, this is my space,
Mm-hmm.
my club."
Because he was living there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
he told him it was his club.
Okay.
And they said, "Oh yeah." So he invited them in. They did a walkthrough with him. How many people you have in here on? You open on Saturday? Yeah. He said, "Yeah." And he said about 300 or 400. And they said, "In this room right here on this floor?" And so he said, "Yeah." So after the walkthrough and stuff, they turned around and wrote him about 67 citations.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Then he turned around and told them, "I don't really own this. I was just like that guy Robert Wood
Oh my God.
is responsible."
Uh-huh.
Right? So they wrote the citations in Frankie Knuckles' name.
Mm-hmm.
Then they had to scratch his name out and put my name in after he told them that.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted the whole dance floor ripped out because it's a timber building. Okay?
Okay.
So a timber building is most of these houses and stuff in Chicago are made of wood.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Okay? So, and the warehouse, unfortunately, was not made for what we were using it for.
300-400 people dancing on the floor.
Yes. And the
floor. So now we find out. Hey, Louis Green.
And the floor, I don't know if you ever noticed, but the floor used to like give a little.
You know, listen, everywhere we went, the floor would give a little bit. I think the Sours was the only place the floor didn't give.
It was concrete.
I think it was concrete. But where I think they all kind of gave it.
Yeah. So, but the inspector said it was going to go.
Oh, wow.
It was unsafe.
Okay.
The beams had been there from 1921 when the building was built.
So we were lucky we all got out of there alive.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So after that, the owners who owned the building that I was leasing from was the Water Saver Faucet Company. They used to make faucets at the warehouse.
Okay.
That's what it originally was.
Wow.
Okay. So they said, "No, Robert. How did you let them in? You know it was a no-no. You were never supposed to let them in."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Frankie did it." Okay. So they said, "Well, Frankie's caused you a big problem because we're not going to replace the whole floor.
No.
So you're going to have to close if they bother you." Like, we're not paying any more for any citations either. So I had to go to City Hall and talk to them. Then brokers for the warehouse called me back and said, "We have a solution. We found you a new space." I said, "Oh, really?" They said, "Yeah, the Swing Bicycle Company at 1632 South Indiana." I was like, "New warehouse." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I went over and looked at it. It was great. Had a mezzanine, and it was just great. So I informed Frankie. I said, "Okay." So meanwhile, while all this was going on with me, these white boys, Michael Graver, and them, they had this club up on Hofstra called the Riverside Club.
Okay.
And they were trying to get out of their lease because it was mostly Caucasians. And a few of the Caucasian boys, gay boys, had been tricking off with the boys from with the boys from Cabrini Green.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
they've been tricking off with the boys from Cabrini Green.
Yeah.
So meaning, were they prostitutes or were they just
no, they were
having
just
a good time?
Having a good time.
Okay.
But the boys from the Greens decided they were marks.
That these other guys were marks.
Yeah, the white boys.
Okay.
So
even though they were sexually active with them.
Yeah, a few of them.
Okay.
But the few that were sexually active did not tell their homies that they were.
So they had to pretend that they were all marks and this was part of the game.
Right. And so let's go rob them instead.
Of course.
Okay. So they started robbing them. Okay. So
you don't get this on a documentary. Hey, Alan King.
So, so therefore, the warehouse is being put together on 16th in Indiana.
You were going to call the 16th in Indiana the warehouse as well.
Right.
Okay.
Because this is our new space.
Yes.
That the brokers from 206 found me.
Gotcha.
So, Michael Graver called me up and said, "Robert, my boy Pardon, we told Frankie about it. He's interested." I said, "Interested? We interested in what?" He said, "Well, they got to get out of the lease, because their clientele is being beat up by these black boys at the projects. They can't have that. These white boys ain't going."
So, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So they told Frankie. Frankie did tell me now. Like what he said, he wanted to go out on his own. He still probably had salty with me about the Dave Medusa act.
Yes.
Philip salty about that. So he said he wanted to go out on his own and do his own thing. So he was leaving, opening up his own club. And I said, "The Riverside Club?" He was like, "Yeah."
So the Riverside was 1015. Got it. That was the power plant.
Right.
Before there was a power plant.
Right. That's correct.
Okay.
So.
And so he got that because the white boys were getting beat up by the Cabrini Green boys. There's so much in this story. I hope our next people don't show up so we can talk a little bit longer. They're kind of late because there are many things I want to unpack. Like, I am very interested in hearing the LGBT part of the story because it does get kind of lost when we talk about, the genesis of this community. But also the Cabrini Green story. I don't think we think of gay boys in Cabrini Green. The gay boys are everywhere, of course.
Right.
But I can imagine how
the boys in the Greens were bisexual.
Many boys.
They would, as we say today, they were DLs.
Well, yes, of course. They were as complex as sexuality can be. But I would imagine in a place like Cabrini Green,
you had to be.
You had to be in
in that environment.
Being gay was seen in many communities as a weakness among men. And if you're in that environment, okay. So I don't want to stop you, please.
So therefore, Frankie decided to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still working on the warehouse at 1632 South Indiana.
Right.
And oh, by the way, I went to New York also
Okay.
and got my other boy, Ryan Braswell,
Ron Braswell. Right.
okay, to come help me when things have gotten
I
ugly.
remember him. He was at the door. Mm-hmm.
So now I'm over here on Indiana, scrubbing and carrying on and redesigning this space
Mm-hmm.
for the warehouse. But I don't have a DJ. But my DJ had just left.
He's at the
And
Riverside.
he
AKA
went to
Outlet.
trying to open up his own club,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I said, well, that's fine, okay. Then Ron Bressel came to me during one of the work hours and said, I got somebody for you.
Mm-hmm.
I heard him at this place called the Ritz. And I was like, who is this? And that's when he introduced me to Ron Hardy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had seen Ron Hardy before at the Den One,
Mm-hmm.
right? He wasn't, I don't know why people say he was a resident DJ there, but he wasn't.
No.
No,
Okay.
it was another guy.
Yeah, but
Okay.
he seems to be affiliated with the Den One. He must have
He was
been there
affiliated,
often.
yeah, but as a patron, moreover,
Mm-hmm.
okay? As far as I was concerned,
Okay.
okay? But, so he introduced me, and I was like, okay, whatever. So, my brother told me he played at the Ritz, this
Mm-hmm.
club on State
Mm-hmm.
and, what's that?
Yeah, I remember Chicago area,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. Yeah, I used to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I said,
That was more like a bar.
there was a bar. It was sort of like the Jeffrey Pub
Yeah.
North.
Yeah, it just had like a little dance floor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we used to go there.
Yeah.
I remember being there a lot.
So,
And they opened a waterworks right next door.
yeah, correct.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Ron Hardy, I told Ron Hardy, would he be interested
Mm-hmm.
in working for me? I told him what happened with Frankie left.
Mm-hmm.
So he told me no.
You get a lot of no's, man.
And I was like, no.
Uh-huh.
You work at a little lounge,
Mm-hmm.
So he said, no, I cannot do any follow-up work behind Frankie Knuckles.
Oh, okay.
He said, and you're not going to get no business anyway.
Wow.
He said, because everybody's going to follow Frankie to the power plant.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, they might, they might. But unfortunately, he didn't know that I was a true business person.
Yeah.
A New York guy at that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought about it and thought about it. And I said, oh, wait a minute. I know how to fix the solution. I forgot I also owned the music box in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I said, my partner, Tony Miner, left, I used to have the music box in Mexico and fly back to the warehouse in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So I had two clubs.
Look at you. You heard it here first.
So I just had, we had dissolved the music box,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to charge it.
Okay.
Okay. So I said, oh, I know how to do this. So I registered the music box in Chicago as a foreign corporation
Mm-hmm.
operating in the city of Chicago.
Okay. Okay. So you gave it an identity
Mm-hmm.
that was different than the warehouse.
Mm-hmm. And then also I said I didn't want it to be gay.
You didn't want it to be gay.
Right.
Now, that's interesting. Well, how did you get a crowd?
Okay. Now,
because Ron Hardy was a DJ in the gay community.
Yes, he was. But I was not anything in the gay community.
Right.
I mean, I was, but I also was in the heterosexual community.
No, you were big in the gay community. Everyone knew you.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Who were in the club scene anyway. but and some of the heterosexual people who traipsed down to the warehouse knew you. A lot of people did. Was that the bridge? the people who you met at the warehouse. Tell me more about how you got this heterosexual crowd to grow at the
Okay.
music box.
While I was working at 16th in Indiana, right,
Mhm.
I met some boys from the Ickies.
Harold Ickey's housing project.
That's correct.
Okay.
Which was Reggie Corner
Reggie
and
Corner.
a few others, right?
Okay.
Now, I needed security also,
Uh-huh.
right?
So you met Reggie Corner where?
Well, he heard music and stuff
Yeah.
at the new music box.
Okay.
Okay, and they started coming around there like, what the hell's going on? Because they weren't that far.
Mm-hmm.
22nd Street wasn't that far from 16th. Okay? Plus, they were going to that other club. What was it called? The
Playground
Playground.
across the street.
Right.
Yeah.
I used to drive past there, going to
Okay.
16th and yeah, I used to see all these kids. I was like, what's a daycare center or
Yeah,
something?
no, that was Jesse Saunders and
See, now, I didn't know anything about
oh,
what was going
absolutely.
on. The fire leader, I didn't know.
Playground.
Yeah, I didn't know nothing about
Playground in the house.
it. Right.
Heidi Hickman. Hey, what's up?
Mhm.
Nice to see you, sis.
So I didn't know anything about that. Okay?
Yeah.
So Frankie Knuckles
Mm-hmm.
heard about me offering Ron Hurley a job and hired him
Mm-hmm.
for the power plant.
Did y'all know that? He hired Frankie hired Ron Hardy to work at the power plant because you offered him a job. Well, you guys are really kind of there's a little bit of a wedge there.
Well, yeah, it was. I
Okay.
mean, it was a red when he left.
I understand. Yeah.
So,
But
but
Ron didn't take the job.
yeah, he did.
Okay.
He took the job at the power plant, right? So, but this is before he knew about the music box deal I was doing.
Got it.
Okay, so I had to like register the music box with the state of Illinois as a foreign corporation.
Got it.
Okay, for business.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working on a lot of that
Yes.
with my lawyer. Okay, in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, I hope we now.
Right.
So I reapproached Ron Harmon. Right? Now he was working Friday nights at the power plant. Frankie was playing on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
So Ron had Friday, Frankie had Saturday at the power plant. Right? So I said, well, I can handle this. So I called him back. I said, well, you're never going to be anything over there at the power plant.
Because he was in Frankie's shop.
Right. I said, you're going to be second fiddle
Right.
the whole time you're there.
Okay. That makes
and I
sense.
said, plus, I'm offering you the whole club
Mm-hmm.
with better salary. He said, didn't I tell you that I didn't want to work for the warehouse? I said, you're not going to be working for the warehouse. They were like, what? I said, you have your own club. It's going to be called the Music Box.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, a music box? I said, yeah, that's your club. No.
Wow.
So that perked him up a little.
I'm sure.
He was like, oh, really? So I showed him the charter. He was like, for real? And I had his name on the charter.
Oh, wow. That was smart.
Mm-hmm. So he was like, I'm in. He quit the power plant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what year was that? 80, 82, 83?
Yeah, around in there.
80, somewhere around there. Okay.
So then, since I operated the warehouse, Frankie was a DJ and Frankie's an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I was the businessman. So it's an artist and a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, the artist is going to move. They always need a manager.
That's true.
You know?
You do need a manager. A lot of broke artists out there.
You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I said, I knew I had him. Right? So I said, what I'm going to do is change the format
Mm-hmm.
of the club. Okay? So I hired this white girl named Diane and this other boy as strip dancers in the club,
Mm-hmm.
in the balcony. put my staff, thank staff, in uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I had this little girl as a cigarette girl, and I had selling loose cigarettes.
Selling loose cigarettes
Right.
at the club.
So when you came into the music box, well, first of all, I had a
Yes.
grand opening. Okay, and it was free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so people were like, and plus, you know, I still had the mailing list from the warehouse.
Of course.
So I mailed out introducing the music box and Ron Hardy to everybody. And people was like, ain't that the warehouse? No, I said music box. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's free, so let's go. And if we don't like it, we can go into the power plant.
Or they can go to the playground. All that stuff is right there.
Yeah, you know.
I find it fascinating that you were able to cultivate this unique crowd, because the warehouse was very gay. Like, I think that there was definitely a smattering of straight people there, but predominantly it was gay folks.
Right.
But the music box was the opposite. It was like
Right.
a majority straight people with a smattering of gay folks.
Right. But see, what happened was when I was in jail, I said, well, you know, I can invite the heterosexuals, the gang members, you know, the thug boys, which I like to, I mean, right?
Although some of them were gay too.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that.
And so I told them, you know, I told Reggie and them, go in the projects, go out west.
So Reggie was really a big promoter
back then
for the music box. Okay.
So they brought people to the box. Also, the gay people who were going to the power plant also came.
Well, we went to the music box. You know, my
yeah,
friends.
but I mean, they came to the opening because it was free, right?
Oh yeah.
And so it was gay and straights kind of like together, right?
Yeah.
And the gay kids were singing, the gay boys were singing these straight boys at the party. It was like, oh, Trey.
They're getting very excited, I'm sure. They were getting very excited. They're like, whoa.
Yeah. So they started coming.
Okay. So for the people who are watching, when you said, oh, Trey, we don't mean that for the non-initiated. That really just means people you would want to date.
Yeah.
Like guys who might be single and interesting. It's not necessarily prostitutes. We say tricks and trades, it doesn't mean sex worker.
And then it was the girls too. The gay girls who were going to the park.
We just didn't call them trade though.
No, the girls had different language. But
we called them dates.
Yeah. They came and saw other straight girls. And like, oh. Yeah. So it was a big crowd that came for the grand opening, right? On Saturday, because it was free.
Yeah.
And they saw the place and went bananas, right? So Ron Hardy played a little differently because he was a bar DJ. And I had to like mentor him on New York type of music that Frankie was playing. And so I had to go to New York again and get people to give me music. I got Larry and all them give me music. Yeah. Ron Hardy, right?
Yeah, because you had to collect records.
Right. But
easy.
Ron Hardy's family, his father was a musician, a jazz musician, right? So he already kind of like was in there, right? So they said, "Oh my God!" So the people who came that Saturday, who was calling themselves just dropping in and going on to the power plant, and they never left. Okay. So Frankie had to close his Saturdays at the power plant.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
Did he?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. Y'all remember
You don't remember that?
I
The
don't.
power plant was only open on Fridays.
You're probably right. Now that you said that. Wow. Yeah, I was trying to finish school at the time.
Yeah.
I was going
But
out.
yeah, it killed his Saturdays.
Well, yeah, people were going to the music box. I was one of them.
And then they were like, then Ron Hardy was a unique, he was a rebel in terms of his music. Frankie played nice, good music now, excellent DJ. but more like by the book.
It was a little more tame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ron didn't.
Well, you know, let me ask you this, because of the way Ron played and at how he pitched everything up and
Well,
tweaked
you know why
everything out.
he did that.
I've heard that it was because he was on drugs.
Yeah.
And
I should say
things
like
felt
that.
slow, so he had to pitch things
Yeah,
up.
that's true.
That's what I heard.
That's what is true.
Okay, well, I believe it. Well, whatever the inspiration, it seemed to launch.
It did.
A lot of ideas
It
about
created
how to play
him.
music.
It created a style for him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so people will say often, you know, there's this debate about who's the godfather of house music, and many people are like, well, Ron Hardy is, because the style that he played more closely resembled what people were emulating when they were creating tracks.
Okay, I'm going to say this. When the warehouse closed, right, and you kids, your generation found yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you know, oh, wait a minute. I think I could handle a drum machine. Mama, could you buy me one? Okay?
Right.
Could you buy me a beat machine, drum machine? So your generation was like the LGBTs and the heteros were actually the ones. Both. Yeah. They were like, listen to what Ron Hardy was playing, not more so than not Frankie, but Ron, right? And then Ron would take in their music. They would try to make a little something at home and bring it to him.
Play it.
And he'd play it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the evolution of house to me. Okay?
I think you hit it on the head.
Yeah.
But I don't think there would be a Ron Hardy. I mean, I think he would exist, but he and Frankie, see, you're kind of like ground zero for both of them. You know what I'm saying? So you're kind of like, not that you're older than them, but you're kind of like the dad. You know, you're like the dad, and they're like the kids. You know what I mean? Right. I know Kevin Abdullah was on the show one time, and he was like, well, I had to go with mom or dad. And he was talking about Frankie or, you know, or Ronnie. But you know what I'm saying? So that's why I think it's all kind of enmeshed. So it's difficult to tease out and say, well, Ron Hardy was one. I think he may have been more influential with those heterosexual kids who weren't informed or influenced by Frankie so much.
Right, because Frankie was actually more dared than Ron. Yeah. Ron acted more like a DL boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he looked like that. He kind of had that affect.
Because he was arrogant and a lot of things, you know.
And Frankie was New York and Ron was Chicago.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean that tells you a lot right there. Native New Yorker versus Southside.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it all makes sense. Okay, we have got it all figured out, people. Miko agrees. Tonka, you agreeing with me? But you know, this
hey y'all.
This is
those
why
my kids too.
Dad. I think it's important. I love that we're having this conversation where we can take the time just to really unpack the architecture of this sound. And Don said it's Robert's fault. What's Robert's fault? I don't know. Something is your fault. Because it's not as simple as this person created this, you know?
No, it's not. Because what you guys did to me, okay, following Ron Hardy, right, created a whole evolutionary kind of pitch on house music. Okay, Marshall Jefferson, Steve Silker, all those were young kids. Chippy, all of them. They brought their music to Ron Hardy. They couldn't take it to Frankie. Frankie was like, You know what I'm saying?
I could see Frankie now. I'm not playing that. But I think he did. I remember, you know.
He played a few things.
He played, you know.
But he only played it because Ronnie played it, and he knew the kids were going berserk.
Well, some things he did break. So he broke Jamie Principal's song.
Gay.
What? Gay? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So what does that mean?
You know what I'm saying?
Gay.
Gay.
Oh, so the song Okay, that's what you're saying. It had a gay feel.
Gay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Well, he broke that. Louis Gomez brought introduced them. You know, my friend Jose, who taught me to DJ, he introduced Jamie to Frankie.
Mm-hmm.
Played his track. He played
Gay.
it 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Gay, gay, gay.
Gay, gay, gay.
So the
Okay.
straight kids were bringing their music to Ron,
Mm-hmm.
and the gay kids were bringing their music to Frankie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I don't know. Y'all have to. This, hey, it's coming from Robert, so you cannot dispute
Well,
this.
it's true. I mean, Marshall Jefferson, all of them, Chippy, all of
Yeah,
it's house.
yeah.
Frankie didn't play that.
He didn't.
If Chippy would have came to him, he was like, "Really? It's what?
Yeah.
It's time for you to go." Okay.
Oh my God.
They
Wait a minute.
live. I mean,
And
you know.
Chippy, did you just hear that? I don't know if you're watching.
Yeah, but
What
look.
Frankie have said is what?
Yeah.
He only heard the term house music when he was going past Leonard's club, Better Days. He said he didn't know the name of the club. I knew the club he was talking about because I used to go there when Leonard was the DJ on on Cottage Grove.
Yeah.
We play house music.
So
what's that?
If people asked
It's
you,
what? Yes.
If people would ask you, Laura, where does house music come from for you?
That's a really good question because see, I'm a Frankie person.
Okay,
I liked Brian Hardy, but I was more
like
the whole that's where I
thing
was.
Is to me,
you know,
the warehouse. I have never said
mm-hmm.
that the warehouse was the birthplace of house. I was saying that the people called the music that came out of their house
music. Well,
okay.
Well, that's why we say that it is a genre, a canon, and a culture.
But I think house music
mm-hmm.
is owed. The pioneer to me of house music is Ron Hardy and the constituents, you and the rest of the kids who were up in his face and running through, and because personally, I had traveled with Ron Hardy to other parties. Like I went to Mendel. He took me to Mendel, right? And I didn't know what Mendel was, right? And so I told him while we were there, right? I said, "What is this?" He said, "It's a high school Mendel." I was like, "Oh." So I understood it was a gig, but it was like passe to me.
Kids. Yeah,
kids. So I told him, I said, "Make sure you don't play that Sensuous Black Woman song for these kids." He said, "I'm not going to play that." I said, "Okay, cool." So I left the stage and went out to the audience. I ran into this girl I knew.
Yes.
And her child was going to Mendel,
mm-hmm.
right? And me and her was out there giggling and carrying on. And all of a sudden we heard, "My name is Bessie Smith," and then it went into.
He did not. Sensuous Black Man.
I want
you to.
And she turned.
Y'all remember that song?
She turned and looked at me, and I was like, "What you looking at me for? Did you bring him here?" I said,
"He played Sensuous Black Man at Mendel."
All them kids. It was like a couple hundred of them.
All right, so if you've never heard Sensuous Black Man, who was the artist? Anyway,
Rudy Ray Moore.
No, it wasn't him.
Yes, it was. And the girl who played on Sampling and Sons was the one was
LaWanda Page.
Yeah, she was in it too.
Okay.
You didn't know that?
I remember the song.
Yeah, she's the one that was talking.
Sensuous Black Man.
She was. It was Wanda Page. Look it up.
That is hilarious.
Okay.
I know all the words to it. That's how bad it is because we would play it and gag
I put it on
all night.
I put it on my aunt's recording.
All right, we're gonna. I dare the next DJ, Alan. I don't know if you're still watching. One of y'all. I want you to play "Sensuous Black Man" at the next party. It was Lady Reed. Leonard said it was Lady Reed. Okay, yeah, Don Joy. I want you to. Ooh, when I see a big shiny. You remember that?
I'm gonna jump out my drone.
Okay, we're gonna keep it moving. Well, you know, there's so much more I want to talk to you about. Let me, because we need to wrap. But what I want to do is we do a timeline. You know, this is a timeline check. So we're talking about the years 1977 to 1984. So the beginning of Robert's tenure with the warehouse through the power plant, through the music box, and in '84 where we had the first tranche of house music records coming out of Chicago with Jesse and then Chip and then others. Um, Let me ask you this: there are a lot of documentaries. We hear about like this era from a lot of perspectives. What do you think has not been told correctly and why?
I don't think the after hour scene in Chicago was told correctly with the gay community for one, like Lonnie Pools and all that.
Yes.
Um, and how it evolved. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you guys and the heterosexual community during the 83 4,
Mm-hmm.
during the Ron Hardy era, was responsible for the evolution of with Farley and them.
Yeah.
That period
Sure.
was the introduction to the evolution of house music.
Yeah.
Okay? I can't testify about sock hops that you guys were doing, you know?
Sours was not a sock hop.
That was,
It resembled one though.
yeah,
Like a citywide sock hop.
it was funny. You know, I went there a
That,
couple, I was like, what is this?
listen, well, we were imitating what we saw.
I was
We
like, what is this? And then I found out it was a restaurant and I really cracked up.
well, that was my coming out party. Sours. So
And what was that one over there on Illinois? No, it was close to the lake in the basement.
I don't know. Illinois close to the lake. Y'all remember what that was? I don't remember. There's so many. I can't remember. There were so many. We had a lot of clubs. You know, we could do a whole show just on clubs. I wanna talk about so many other things, but we're out of time. So listen, we're going to get deeper into this conversation with my friend Robert Williams, who, as you have seen, is the historian. Okay, and that, uh, and he knows where the bodies are buried, where the trade can be found, and many more things that are not appropriate for this show, but maybe for over a cocktail. I think the next time we talk, we're going to have cocktails, and we'll do it in a different format, so you can cuss and tell secrets and all that good stuff. One other thing I want to talk about. We don't have time today, but the next episode we're going to get into house music and a thing that affected so many people that we know at the exact same time that house music was being born, which was HIV. I don't mean to put a blanket on this conversation, but
that was wild. That was a wild period.
It was a very wild period. We lost a lot of people. So
that's because the government lied.
Well, there's you about to open up a whole can of worms. Anyway, listen, I want to thank y'all for tuning in to Vintage House Show. We're still doing it here. I want to give a special shout out to all the folks who are watching: Annette, Alan King, Day Day Butler, Dawn Joy, Leonard Roy. I appreciate y'all so much just for tuning in and being a part of this community and a part of this conversation. Miko. And I also want to say we are celebrating 10 years of Vintage House. The Vintage House Show has been on for 10 whole years. We're going to do a special celebration honoring the folks who've been a part of this community. I've been really blessed to have been able to talk and interview folks and capture these stories.
Like Roy.
Roy, I was going there, is that we've lost so many people in our community. Roy Bryant has been on the show a couple times. I think he came with you. He brought you up here once. Mm-hmm. And Roy was a friend to so many people, a great friend to so many people. And we are really devastated that we have lost Roy. I remember so many days hanging out with him in Craig's basement and with our mutual friends, and I know that he was so close to so many of you. So we're sending him off with love. His service is this Friday. I know many people will be there to honor him. But not only Roy, but Craig Cannon and Terry, and
I can't even begin to tell you about him.
Elijah. There's been like 8 people who've been on this show who are no longer with us.
Wow.
And so I'm really feeling blessed that we've been able to capture those stories and save those stories about the history of our culture and our city and the people who contributed to house music and the dance community. So more on that later. But Vintage House is doing our work to try to preserve those stories and make them available to you. So we will keep you posted as things develop. Rest in peace, Roy. I'll see some of you, I'm sure, soon. And let's keep it going. Peace out. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
Can you say thank you to our senior? Our father. All righty. Take care of him. So you've been listening to Vintage House on WNUR 89.3 FM and HD1 Evanston, Chicago. We're going to leave you here with a little bit of music for WNUR and say good night.
Thanks for listening to the Vintage House Show podcast. Please subscribe and share, and check us out live, WNUR 89.3 FM, Wednesdays at 10 o'clock.